Hello students, how are you all doing? I hope everyone is healthy, everyone is keeping well, and most importantly, everyone is studying well, right? So today we are going to look at some of the places in news with respect to December 2025, right? In that regard, let's look at the first one. This is Somaliland. Now, I'm guessing that most of you would have heard about Somalia, right? It is an African country. Now, on which coast of Africa do you find Somalia? Is it on the east or the west coast? If you have an understanding about that, then you will be able to guess that this is in the Horn of Africa region, that is East Africa, right? So in East Africa, in the region of Horn of Africa, right? Around which countries? So this is the Somaliland region, right? In that regard, there is Somalia, then Ethiopia and Djibouti, right? Which are the countries in this particular region, right? Now, what are some of the other crucial important aspects? So here you will find a very important strait that is among the most important choke points with respect to oil and gas, that is Bab al-Mandeb, right? Bab al-Mandeb Strait, linking Red Sea to Gulf of Aden and finally to the Indian Ocean region, right? This is very important for the trade that is moving towards Europe, right? Because from this Bab al-Mandeb Strait, it will move towards Red Sea, then Gulf of Suez, Suez Canal, Mediterranean Sea, and finally Europe, right? So in that regard, it is very close to Bab al-Mandeb Strait, but not Strait of Hormuz, that is on the other side of this Arabian Peninsula, right? Now, what are some of the other aspects? So in this regard, because the news is that Israel has become the first country to recognize it. Now, what is this about recognition by a country? In that regard, let's see some of the components with respect to what is a de facto state, what is a de jure state, what are some of the principal aspects through which we analyze countries. So let's say one country would be India, right? Because we know about our country better. So one country would be India and other country, let's say it is Somaliland. In this regard, let's try and understand how is that we are a de jure country and why do we call Somaliland a de facto country, right? So in that regard, let's look at the first aspect of de jure and de facto countries, right? Now, de jure countries have four important components, right? Which are these? So they will have defined territory, right? They will have a defined territory. They will have a population, right? They will have a population. They will have a government, an organized government, right? As well as they will be recognized by other countries. So they will also have recognition, right? So we know that India has all four of these. We have a defined territory, we have a population, we have a government, we have a recognition. In case of Somaliland, right, or in case of countries like Somaliland, what is happening? They have territory, they have population, they even have government, right, but they do not have recognition. Therein lies the difference, that they are de facto country. In fact, they have their own currency also, right, but they do not have recognition by peer countries, right? Now, which is this convention that talks about this statehood criteria? So this is the statehood criteria, and this is under which convention? Can anyone tell? Can anyone guess? This is Montevideo Convention. Very important, especially not just because of Somaliland, but also with respect to Palestine, also with respect to Taiwan, right? That is why it has become really important to know about this Montevideo Convention, which gives us the statehood criteria, right? If for a better understanding, just try and compare it with India and these other territories. All right. So these are some of the basic aspects. this is crucial, right? Because this particular country claimed its or declared its independence in 1991 itself, right? But right now, by 2026, it is gaining recognition, and that too from just one country, that is Israel. Also, if you look at this particular region, what is happening is Ethiopia is a landlocked country. It does not have any access to either this Gulf of Aden or the Red Sea. So there is a good possibility that it might also recognize Somaliland so that it is able to get access, because Somaliland is proposing that they will give free access to Ethiopia also in this particular water body, right? Or some of the ports that are there, right? These are some of the crucial aspects. Now, I'm hoping that you have good understanding about the countries that are around Red Sea. You have a good understanding about some of the islands that you will find in this particular region. We have already done this in the previous classes. So I'm hoping that you are able to remember these things. Okay. Ethiopia is a very, very important country because it is also the source of one of the streams of the Nile River, right? Can anyone tell me? This is just from the last few classes. So which was this river, right? Where is it rising from? Which is the particular area that it is rising from, right? Here, this is very important, especially so because Taiwan, Palestine is very much in news. So there is a good possibility that UPSC might test you in this particular way about these things. All right. Now let's look at the question with respect to this particular section. All done. Shall we move ahead to the next one? Now, the next one is, I think most of you would have heard about this particular mountain. This is Mount Kilimanjaro, right? Now, the news itself, more than the news itself, we need to have a good understanding about this particular peak. Where is it? It is in Tanzania, right on the borders of Kenya, right? So, it is very near to the borders with respect to Kenya, right? Now, why is it important? Because this is the highest mountain in Africa, right? So it is among the 7 summits we have talked about before also, 7 summits challenge, right? About the highest peaks in different continents. So this is the highest peak, but this is a free hanging mountain. It is not part of a range. In that regard, it is very different from Mount Everest. So this can be a statement question also, right? That how is Mount Kilimanjaro different from Mount Everest? This is a free standing mountain, right? Next important aspect is that is it just one peak or is it a collection of peaks? Do you understand? So this particular aspect is that this particular Mount Kilimanjaro that we call Mount Kilimanjaro is a collection of 3 cones, right? It is a collection of 3 cones, right? And which are these cones? So there is, now these are, of course, will be having some local pronunciations also. We'll try and give it the best possible attempt. So this is Kibo in the center, right? Kibo and in the center. Next is, this will be Mawenzi and Shira. Mawenzi and Shira. More than the name of these 3 cones, you need to know that there are 3 cones, right? What kind of volcano is it, right? Can anyone tell me where would you find multiple cones in a particular volcano, right? This is very important because it is also at the divergent boundary of the East African Rift Valley. I'm hoping that you must have by now have had a good understanding of this East African Rift Valley, right? So East African Rift Valley is causing divergent boundary, right, leading to this particular mountain being formed. Now it's a very tall mountain, almost 6,000 meters, right? So it is quite a lengthwise, it's quite a tall mountain, right? Now in this particular context, what is happening in case of divergent boundary? In case of divergent boundary, what are some of the basic things that are happening here? So because the two plates are moving apart, है ना? Because the two plates are moving apart, the earth is fracturing and magma is able to rise up, right? So this is leading to the volcanic formation. Next important aspect is that this particular mountain is having its own zonation because it is a very, very tall mountain. It's a free hanging mountain. So it has its own vertical zonation. Now this is very important. Let's look at the vertical zonation with respect to Mount Kilimanjaro, right? So there are 4 major zonations. We'll look at all 4 of them. At the base level, you will find, because it is in the equatorial region, you will find very, very tropical climate, tropical forest you are going to find. So there is tropical forest at the base level. As we move up, right? So in the middle region, right? In the middle region, what kind of climate you do find? These are now grasslands, savanna grasslands, right? So grasslands. Next, as we move even further up, right? As we move in the upper reaches, this will be alpine. So upper regions would have alpine. In fact, it is so dry that it is called an alpine desert. And finally, at the summit level, right, very close to 6,000 meters. So this is very, very snowy and very, very icy conditions. So at the summit, you will find snow or icy conditions. So it has its own vertical zonation of the kind of vegetation and the kind of different aspects with respect to vegetation species that you will find in different regions, right? It is having altitude based variation, the vegetation is varying according to as the altitude is rising up, right? Now here, because it is in the equatorial region, right, and there is snow, right, but as the global warming is rising, the snow is melting very, very fast. The glaciers are retreating very quickly, right? Of course, because of climate change, right? These are some of the basic aspects. It is not a subduction volcano. Here, two plates are not converging but diverging. That you must remember. All right. This is all right. Next is, let's see the question. All done. Shall we move ahead? All right. I'm hoping that you have tried to answer it, right? Now, the next one is Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming state of United States of America, right? Almost towards the middle American region, right? Now, what is it? It is a super volcano. It is a super volcano. Why are we calling it a super volcano, right? Because its caldera, it's not having a crater, but a caldera is 70 kilometer wide. 70 kilometer wide caldera, right? And what kind of volcano is it? Now, it is in the which particular plate? It is in the North American plate, right? So there is no convergence or divergence of plate boundaries that is happening here. So what kind of volcano will it be? Where there is no convergence or divergence, there is no subduction, there is no divergence. This is hotspot volcanism, right? This is hotspot volcanism. Now, in this regard, what are some of the basic aspects that we need to know? Why is this kind of volcano so important for us, and why is it specifically Yellowstone so important for us? So this particular area is very rich in biodiversity, right? Because of some of the factors that are associated with this kind of volcano, that is geysers, hotspots, mud volcanoes. Those are other aspects. But this caldera in itself or its formation is also important. In that regard, let's look at this caldera formation. Now, this is a massive area. This is a massive area. It causes massive eruptions. So, after the massive eruption, right, and these eruptions keep on happening again and again. So, after one massive eruption, what will happen? As the magma chamber empties beneath the ground, as the magma chamber empties, right, the land will collapse into itself, right? Land collapses, leading to the formation of a caldera, right? Leading to the formation of a caldera. In this particular instance, it is 70 kilometer wide, right? Now, this is not a crater. Crater is a very in comparison to this one is a smaller area, right? So, this is not equal to a crater. It is very large areas, right? These are causing super massive eruptions, right? Very destructive in that regard, right? If you would have heard about a movie by the name of 2012, right? So this is the volcano that they are talking about, right? So these are some of the basic aspects. Here you will find geysers, hot springs, right? Mud volcanoes and other things. It is very geologically rich, biodiversically rich. Okay? So let's look at the question with respect to this particular section. Let's see how many of you are able to get it correct. All done. Have we all given the correct answer? All right. Next one, it is the Arctic region. Now, this is increasingly becoming a really prominent area, really prominent conflict area. Right now, we are mostly seeing in regard to with respect to climate change aspect, but slowly it will become economically important, energy security wise, it becomes really important in that regard. Let's look at where is this particular region that we are talking about. So this is the region that is north of the Arctic Circle. Arctic Circle is, I'm hoping that most of you would know, this is 66.5 degrees north, right? So this is the region that is north of it. Now, which are the countries that are having their lands in this particular area? So, of course, one of the major countries is Russia, right? Now, as we move in this particular direction, there is Alaska from the USA, then there is Canada. Now, this is very important this year because it is the Greenland, it is a territory of Denmark. Hence, if you look at the Arctic Council members, there is also Denmark. Then there is, of course, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Finland, right? So there are 8 members to this particular council: Russia, US, Canada, Denmark, then Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Finland. You must have an understanding about Arctic Council. It is going to become increasingly important, right? Now, what is the aspect of climate change that is going on here? So in regard to climate change, as global warming is increasingly the ice in the Arctic is melting very rapidly, right? So Arctic's ice is melting rapidly, leading to sea level rise, right? So the first aspect is melting of ice leading to rise in sea level. Next would be, so this is the climate change aspect, but next would be because of the thawing of the permafrost, right? As the permafrost is thawing, right? As they are getting released, so they are also leading to release of methane, release of methane due to the thawing of the permafrost, right? I'm hoping that you have an understanding that what are permafrost, right? It is covering how much area of our total freshwater and total surface water, right? you must have an understanding. This is straight away from the NCERTs. So the NCERT books themselves have given these figures, right? So do look at permafrost, right? Permanently frozen soil, right? But do have a look in this particular region, right? Next important aspect is that glaciers are also melting, right? Now, in case of glacier melting, there are important aspect that is going on, that is called ice albedo feedback, right? So this is ice albedo feedback. In that regard, in case of this ice albedo feedback, what do you see? So we know that because of the rising temperatures, ice is melting, right? Now, as ice is melting away, ice is able to do what? It is able to reflect a lot of sunlight, right? But now less sunlight is reflected. So in case of ice albedo feedback, ice melts, hence less sunlight is reflected. That is the albedo effect, right? Less sunlight reflected. Now, what is this feedback mechanism that we are talking about? Because less sunlight is reflected, there is more absorption. There is more absorption. Hence, it will cause even more warming and then even more ice melting. So, warming increases, leading to ice melting even more. So this is the ice albedo feedback. Albedo feedback. All right. So this is with respect to the Arctic region. In this regard, let's look at the question. All done. All right. Let's look at the next one. This is Tigris River. Now, I'm hoping that most of you would have heard about Mesopotamian civilization, right? One of the peer civilizations when there was Harappan, Mesopotamian, Egyptian civilization, right? So this Mesopotamian civilization was based around two rivers, that is Tigris and Euphrates, right? This is the area of the Mesopotamian civilization, right? Now, what are some of the basic things about this particular river? So where would this river originate and which is the civilization that it is associated with? First question, this is the Mesopotamian civilization, and this particular civilization is in today's which area? This is of course majorly in Iraq region, right? Now, as we move towards this particular modern day country, now what you'll see is Tigris is flowing towards the north and Euphrates is towards the south in a basic understanding of orientation, right? So Tigris is towards the north or towards the east, right? And Euphrates is towards the south or towards the west, right? So it is rising in Turkey. Both of these rivers are rising in Turkey and then it is flowing into the Iraq region and then finally into the Persian Gulf. Now, there is a very important aspect that when it rises in Turkey, what is happening here? So here, what you will find is that it is being fed by snow, right? It is being fed by snow, right? But as it moved towards Iraq region, it is mostly dependent on rainfall, right? So it is having both kind of drainage, right? So it is, when it is originating in Turkey, it is being fed by snow, and then as it moves towards Iraq, it is mostly rain fed, right? Rain fed. All right. Next important aspect is that there is a particular place where Tigris meets with Euphrates, right? Before going together towards the Persian Gulf, right? That is why we are generally associating Tigris Euphrates with an hyphen, right? So which is this place where they will join? This is the place of Shat al-Arab, right? Here Tigris meets Euphrates, right? So here both these rivers will meet and then they will move towards the Persian Gulf, right? So this becomes really important, that it is not independently draining into the Persian Gulf, but actually coming together with Euphrates River, right? This is a similar thing that is happening with respect to the tributaries of Indus in Pakistan region. Do you remember a river by the name of Panjnad? Have you heard about this particular term? If you have not, do take a look that which are the streams that are making into the Panjnad and where is the stream going and finally meeting the Indus, right? Both these aspects are important. It is, of course, the 5 tributaries, most important tributaries of Indus, that is Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Beas, Satluj, and then it is meeting into the Indus mainstream, right, near Mithankot. So these are some really important aspects. You can always associate Indian geography with these kind of aspects, right? Of course, this is part of the Fertile Crescent, right? This is basically forming a Doab region, the area between 2 rivers. So it is very, very fertile. It is very, very fertile region, and that is why this particular Mesopotamian civilization was able to base itself around it. If it is fertile, one of the most important economic activity would be agriculture, right? Very similar to our Ganga, Yamuna, Doab region and the river basins, right? Here, in modern context, what you will find is that this particular region especially is having some water scarcity issues, especially in the region of Iraq, right? Because Turkey is building a dam in this in the northern parts, so Iraq is facing a water scarcity issue, and this kind of questions are rising in UPSC. So you must have some multi-dimensional understanding of these particular areas, right? In that regard, let's look at the question from this particular section. Are we done? Shall we move ahead? All right. Now let's look at the next country, that is Jordan. This is the 75th anniversary of our diplomatic relations, right? So in that regard, let's look at some of the important aspects with respect to Jordan and why is it generally in news. So this is a country in West Asia, right? Very near to Mediterranean Sea, but sharing no borders with the Mediterranean, right? Now, which are the countries here? So there is Israel, Syria, Iraq and Saudi Arabia that it is sharing its land borders with. It is not sharing its land borders with Egypt, but it is very close to Egypt, but not sharing a land border with Egypt. This becomes very important, right? Next important aspect is, which is one of the most prominent water bodies that you will find here. Now, in this context, with respect to countries, there is also a West Bank region. This is the Gaza Strip, right, on the borders with respect to Egypt, but there is also a West Bank region, quite a big section, right? And this is on the west bank of Jordan River, right? That is why it is named as West Bank, right? In that regard, which is the sea? This is, of course, Dead Sea. Dead Sea, one of the most saline water bodies on earth, right? It is also one of the deepest points on the land, right? Not including the sea, but on the land it is one of the deepest points, right? So in that regard also it is very important. Next important aspect is, it is very close to the conflict area with respect to Israel-Palestine issue, right? Here there was one of the water bodies that we have already seen, that is Sea of Galilee, right? And as we move forward, you will find Dead Sea, and as we move forward, here you will find which particular water body? So we are moving towards the, which one? This is, of course, Gulf of Aqaba, and then towards the Red Sea, Bab el Mandeb Strait, Indian Ocean region, right? So these are some of the important aspects. Next important thing is, which is this particular area known as? So this is the Sinai Peninsula, right? It is in Egypt, right? After the Sinai Peninsula, you will find the Gulf of Suez, Suez Canal. Okay? So this is with respect to the country of Jordan, right? Let's look at the particular question. All right. All right. Now the last one for today, this would be the Thailand-Cambodia border tensions, right? A lot of very interesting aspect is coming from this particular section, right? So it's very important that you have a basic understanding about this particular border dispute. Now let's see what is happening here. So I'm hoping that most of you know that this is both of them are part of the ASEAN group of countries. How many countries are there? There are 10 countries. There are 10 countries. Which are these? So as we move from our borders, so there will be Myanmar, then this is Laos, then Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, right? Then there is Malaysia, right? And as we move down, there is Singapore, Indonesia, Brunei, right? Philippines, right? So these are some of the countries that are associated with ASEAN. Generally, it is a very peaceful region, but there was a boundary dispute with respect to a specific temple and a specific area that is known as Priya Vihar, right? Of course, there would be a particular local pronunciation also, but we are going with Priya Vihar. Now, this particular temple is a very important temple because it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, UNESCO recognized World Heritage Site. Also, when it was made by the Khmer Kings, right? So, Khmer Kings made it as a Shiva temple. Later on, it was also used by Buddhists, right? So, this is a Shiva temple, which was later on used by Buddhists also, around which this particular border dispute is happening, right? Now, whenever we are hearing about border disputes and territorial aspects with respect to Southeast Asia, we are generally thinking about South China Sea, we are generally thinking about China. Neither is the case here. It is not a maritime dispute, it is a land border dispute. It is not in South China Sea, it is not with respect to in any way related to China. This is between Thailand and Cambodia that this particular aspect is going on, right? Now, in this regard, what are some of the basic things that you will have to remember? That both countries are part of ASEAN, right? Both are fighting over or having a disagreement with respect to this colonial boundary demarcation, right? As is the case with many of these boundaries, right? Which have been drawn in the colonial era, there is a dispute and over which this particular dispute or this particular tension has happened, right? Now, let's look at this particular question from this topic. This is a very interesting conflict in that regard. So, you must have a basic understanding, plus it is very close to our own region. All right. So, this covers all the basic aspects, right? The last question is, of course, a culmination of all the topics that we have done today. So, let's see how many of you are able to answer it. You can pause it here, try and answer it, and then let's see how many of you are able to get it correct. All right. That is all for today. Are you able to see it? All right. That is all for today. Thank you so much. Wish you all the very best and meet you in the next class. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.